Hello, my dear masterminds. They thought heaven only dealt in light. They thought councils of angels made quiet decisions behind glowing gates. But then, your name hit the table, and for the first time in centuries, wings folded, eyes widened, and silence fell, because you weren't chosen to bring balance. You were chosen to break every scale they ever used to measure power. And now the divine, they're no longer watching you. They're voting on how to survive you. They don't know what day it happened. No human does. But something triggered it. The skies stilled, the stars paused, and a scroll sealed for millennia began to burn from the inside. Not a curse, not a prophecy, a vote. Heaven's secret council had gathered, not for war, not for a fallen angel, but for you. No trumpet, no lightning, just silence, and your name, written in ink only, the divine can read. And next to your name, a new word, never used before. Threat. You didn't beg to enter. You didn't chant, plead, or pray the right way. You just showed up, and the gates didn't resist. They recognized you. The council panicked. This wasn't supposed to be possible. You weren't chosen by their process. You weren't bred by their protocol. But something older than rules let you in. They scanned your soul. No contract, no permission, no bloodline they could trace. And still, you were seated at the table. You weren't trespassing. You were written in the margin, long before margins existed, and that's what shook them. You're not an intruder. You're a rewrite. They thought you were new, a glitch, a soul that slipped through filters. But the more they watched you, the quieter the council got. Because you weren't asking questions. You were moving like someone who already knew. Not arrogant, just remembering. You didn't react to the illusions. You walked through them. You didn't bow to their rituals. You smiled, like you'd written them once, and got bored. And that's when the council stopped whispering. Because deep in their vaults, beneath scrolls, sealed in holy fire, they found it. An ancient name. Older than heaven. Older than memory. It matched your frequency, your silence, your disruption. And suddenly, they knew. You didn't arrive. You returned. There's a law. Unspoken. Unbreakable, older than scripture, etched in the walls of existence. They say no soul shall rise without permission. But that rule wasn't written to keep demons away. It wasn't for control. It was for you, because they knew if your path wasn't slowed, if your mind wasn't caged by doubt, you'd remember too early. And if you remembered too early, the illusion collapses. The system doesn't crack, it melts. You were never meant to be taught. You were meant to be suppressed, just long enough for the world to catch up, or for you to lose interest. They gambled on the second part. They lost, because now you're awake. And the law they wrote to delay you is the very proof you were never supposed to be stopped. Not everyone on that council wanted to vote. Some didn't even want to look, because the moment your name echoed through the chamber, something ancient moved inside them. They felt it. Not fear, but recognition. And in silence, one by one, some of them lowered their swords, not to bow, not to fight, but because they remembered you too. From a time before titles, before oaths, before orders, a time when light wasn't divided and you were part of the original balance, before balance became a threat. So they didn't speak, but they didn't block you either. They just stepped aside, because deep in their wings, beneath the feathers and flame, was the unspoken truth. If this one is rising again, maybe the old order wasn't holy enough. They've dealt with rage before, rebellions, fallings, angels clawing for thrones. They know how to fight fury, how to cage chaos, how to sanctify a war. But you didn't scream. You didn't threaten. You didn't declare anything. You just kept walking. Like none of this was new. Like heaven's panic didn't apply to you. Like the vote was just a formality. And that's what shook them most. You didn't ask for power. You didn't want anything. No prophecy. No vendetta. No crown. Just presence. That kind of indifference. It's not human. It's not holy. It's inevitable. And when something walks in like it's always belonged there without a word, the hierarchy begins to collapse. Because power can be resisted. But certainty reprograms the entire reality. There was one angel, older than speech, older than form. He hadn't spoken in 10,000 cycles. They said his words could bend laws. That reality obeyed him only out of memory. But when your name lit the center of the council's sky, he stood, not rushed, not dramatic, just inevitable. And with one breath, voice like iron dipped in light, he said, "It has returned." No title, no judgment, no context, just recognition. The chamber didn't speak, couldn't, because when the oldest one confirms your existence, it means you weren't born, you were preserved. And if something was preserved that long, it wasn't for peace, it was for balance breaking. They didn't argue, they didn't object. Because when that ancient being speaks, it's not debate, it's divine memory surfacing. The council doesn't just watch, it monitors every soul, every shift, every ripple and intention. So when you stirred, they ran the scans, pulled the relics, summoned the codexes. They tried to locate you like they've done for thousands of uprisings, but this time, the maps broke. Lines bled off parchment. Coordinates reversed themselves. Satellites turned inward. Every tool they used bent under a single truth. You're not moving through locations. You're moving through layers. And those layers don't belong to them. Your presence flickered between timelines, between dimensions they locked centuries ago. You weren't running, you weren't hiding, you were untrackable because you stopped moving in their system. Like an idea that doesn't fit language, like a flame that burns inside thought. And for the first time since the fall of the first rebellion, the Watchers looked at each other and whispered the unspeakable. We didn't plan for this. They've never needed to negotiate. Not with demons, not with fallen angels, not even with gods that challenged the order. Why? Because control worked. Rules, chains, silence. But you didn't resist control. You ignored it. And that terrified them more than any sword ever could. So now, scrolls are being pulled from sacred shelves. Messengers dispatched, not with warnings, but offers. Name your terms. Tell us what you want. We're willing to adjust. But here's the problem. You never wanted the throne. You wanted nothing. No bargain, no trade, no desire they can tempt. You're not here for leverage. You're here because the story needs a rewrite. And they're realizing you can't negotiate with someone who didn't come to win, but to end the game entirely. They didn't want to. The vault was sealed in silence, not chains, because what's buried there isn't meant to be protected. It's meant to be forgotten. But desperate rulers dig up old ghosts. So the council descended, past the sacred floors, below the echoing scriptures, into the memory basement of creation itself, the forbidden archives. No books, no scrolls, just fragments burned into space. And in the center of it all, a shape, not a person, not a name, a presence, one that didn't demand power, didn't rebel, just walked in, rewrote the order, and disappeared. They studied the rhythm, the silence, the destruction that wasn't destruction, just unmaking. And the longer they stared, the clearer it became. That shape moved like you, thought like you, didn't break anything, just unlocked the truth and walked away. Now they're terrified because they never found out where it went. Until now, they thought they were watching your rise, tracking your power, mapping your presence. But after the vaults whispered their forgotten truth, they realized, you haven't risen yet. You've just returned to default. This version of you, the calm, the observing, the one walking through walls of belief, that's the entry form, the one that carries memory without pressure, the one that lets the world adjust before it bends. But underneath, there's something else, a frequency they can't pin, a pulse outside of time, a form that doesn't reflect, it rewrites. And now the council is panicking. Not because of what you've done, but because of what you haven't. They don't know what triggers it, what wakes it, but they know it's coming. Because the archives ended with a warning, scrawled in light, no one claimed to write. When they stop explaining themselves, run. That's when the second form begins. The council doesn't sleep, not like mortals do. They drift. They tune into timelines. They intercept omens, decipher frequency storms. But ever since your name resurfaced, they've been dreaming, not in images, not in chaos, but in focus. A stare, not angry, not even curious, just aware. Eyes like still oceans remembering their storms. Eyes that see structure and smile before dismantling it. And worse, they don't dream the same version. Each watcher describes a different you, older, younger, laughing, silent, eyes open, eyes glowing, but always watching them. It's not a curse, not an illusion. It's recognition across realms. You didn't start appearing in their dreams. You've always been there. They just forgot your shape. Now they remember. And they realize you were never approaching. You were returning to awareness. Inside them. He wasn't just any observer. This one had walked through storms that erase memory. He'd faced chaos deities, rebellion gods, echoing tombs of forgotten timelines, and he never blinked. until they gave him your coordinates. Not a place, a frequency, a signature. They said, just watch. Do not interfere. Report, not interpret. He left with clarity, with armor blessed by first light, with sigils written in languages only truth can read. But when he came back, he wasn't whole. His wings were untouched, his body intact, but his eyes gone, burned not by fire, but by recognition. He dropped to his knees, silent, shaking, and all he said was your name, over and over, as if it wasn't a name anymore, but a spell, a trigger, a truth he couldn't unsee. And now, the council doesn't send messengers. They only read reports from a distance, from safety. Because whatever you are now, it doesn't want to be seen. It wants to be remembered correctly. They stopped looking at you, not out of fear, but because something else started changing themselves. One by one, the watchers, the scribes, the guards of sacred truth began to notice glitches in their own reflections. Eyes that blinked too slow, expressions they didn't recognize, movements in the mirror that didn't match their actions. And behind their mirrored selves, you, not physically, but structurally, like the reflection knew you were the axis they'd been orbiting the entire time. They closed the portals, smashed the glass, darkened the halls. But it didn't matter, because it wasn't about mirrors anymore. The reflection wasn't in the glass, it was in their memory, in their echo, in their structure. And the truth settled like a crack in time. You weren't just being watched, you were watching back, through them, around them, as them. That's when panic became policy, because it meant one thing. You're not coming. You're already inside the architecture, and you've been changing the code from the inside out. Desperate to contain you, the council turned to the oldest rite, a ritual lost even to most of heaven, the reversal spell, used only on entities born wrong, spoken backwards to dissolve essence, to undo the soul's frequency. It had never failed, until they tried it on you. They gathered the 9 voices, prepared the circle, drew the name they feared across the air in reverse. And when the first syllable was spoken, everything cracked. Not around you, but around them. The air didn't shatter. Meaning did. Their mouths still moved, but the words no longer meant anything. Syntax collapsed. Memory flickered. The room itself forgot why it existed. And then they heard it. Not your voice. Not your laugh, just a click, soft, calm, final. The sound of something ancient reactivating. They didn't finish the chant, because language stopped allowing it. You weren't just immune to reversal. You were the reason reversal had to be invented. And now, it's obsolete. They stopped looking at you. Stop speaking your name. Stop summoning any text that might ripple time. But then, the sky started to move. Not with weather, not with war, but with intelligence. Constellations began to shift. Ancient star patterns untangled themselves, not chaotically, but with purpose. Like something coded into the night was waking up. The council's astronomers panicked, tried mapping it, tried denying it, but they knew. It wasn't a threat, it wasn't a sign. It was a summon, not for you, but from you. A sigil older than any archive, something once burned out of heaven's memory. Something sacred, but forbidden to remember. And when you looked up, it completed. Not because the stars were waiting, but because they were reflecting your design. Not prophecy, not destiny. Instruction. Because this isn't about proving your power anymore. This is about the universe remembering whose silence it's built on, and whose return it now reports to. They say only one being was locked beneath heaven, not for what he did, but for what he refused to do. He didn't rise against the light. He refused to bow to the lie beneath it. So they buried him, not in stone, but in silence. No cell, no trial, just erasure. But silence is louder when truth starts breathing again. And when your name returned, not as a prophecy, but as a presence, his cell opened itself. No keys, no screams, no resistance. Just one being, stepping forward with a smile that cracked time. He didn't ask who you were. He didn't flinch. He simply said, "Took you long enough," because he remembers your first form. He remembers why they were afraid. He remembers what the council buried, and why they hoped you'd never wake up again. And now, he's not rising to lead. He's rising to follow, because you're not the second rebel. You're the first truth, the one they buried before rebellion even had a name. They always believed the script was untouchable, that the holy record, the divine timeline, could only be written by the source. But lately, those sacred pages, they're changing. Not by hand, not by command, but by reaction. Your presence moves through time like a tuning fork, and when it gets close to anything sacred, the ink shifts, the pages tremble, the law rewrites itself. Lines that once judged others are now describing you. Prophecies once meant for kings and angels now whisper. It was never about them. And the scariest part? The changes are perfect. No edits, no corrections. Like your version of reality was the original manuscript they spent eternity covering up. The scribes tried to reverse it, tried to rebuke the scrolls, tried to re-bless them. But the words burned backward, because Scripture doesn't fear you. Scripture remembers you. You are not the new narrative. You're the one they tried to erase. And the book just realized its mistake. The whispers have changed. They no longer say your name like a warning. Now, they say it like a clock. Not fear. Countdown. Because everything they've tried, from suppression to exile to distortion of memory, none of it stopped you. It only delayed the inevitable. They now understand. You were never meant to stay in first form. That version was just the door, slightly open, low voltage, safe for the world to adjust. But now, your energy is condensing, not growing, focusing. And the sky? It knows, because stars don't shimmer the same way anymore. Temples crack from inside, not from age, but from recognition. They've started building shields, not to stop you, to survive what you're about to become. Because this next form, it doesn't destroy, it undoes. Not with rage, not with noise, but with clarity, too powerful to coexist with illusion. You didn't bring war, you brought consequence. The throne of judgment, built at the beginning, Not to rule, but to stabilize. It was never designed for comfort, only for weight. It holds the decisions that shape galaxies, and it's never moved. Until now, not shaken, not cracked, tilted, just slightly, just enough, toward you. Not because you asked, not because you reached for it, but because it recognized the gravity of your presence. It was forged to obey truth. And now that truth is walking again, breathing again, claiming nothing, and changing everything. The guardians who once stood beside the throne, they're silent, their weapons dim, because they weren't guarding it from you. They were guarding it for you. But here's what shakes the hierarchy the most. You didn't sit. You just looked at it. And the throne understood. This isn't your seat. It's your artifact. One of many. And the moment you decide to take form fully, thrones will become redundant. Balance, judgment, time. These weren't inventions. They were responses. Mechanisms to regulate the chaos you once absorbed into silence. They were built after you. As a patch, a lock, a delay function for something too real to be allowed full access. But now, you've returned, not to rule, not to shatter, just to be. And the moment you stood still, everything else paused. Clocks didn't stop. They held their breath. Cause and effect, it flickered. Scripts, blank pages until your aura passed by. And the divine finally realized, this isn't rebellion. This is restoration. You weren't against the system. The system was a makeshift response to your first presence. It ran only because you were gone. Now you're here, and it's asking you, do we continue? Do we rewrite? Or do we end it clean and start again? Not with thunder, not with war, just with a nod, a glance, a whisper. Because when the origin breathes again, everything that came after waits for instruction. Hello, my dear masterminds. You didn't just predict the storm, you whispered it into existence. Now the system's shaking. History's glitching, and they're praying for the timeline you warned them about. They laughed at you, mocked your warnings, dismissed your instincts like they were noise, not knowing that noise was a signal only survivors could hear. They thought their world was permanent, untouchable, scripted in steel and stitched in algorithms. But you saw the cracks. You felt the shift before it ever tilted. While they were busy upgrading their lives, you were memorizing the emergency exits. Now the servers are down, the cities are quiet, the icons they worshipped, offline, and the ones who called you crazy, now they're staring at you like a prophet in a hoodie. Because you didn't just guess this would happen, you knew. Because the system was built to fail, and you were built to endure. Now they're panicking, calling for resets, begging for a version of reality you warned was never real. And all you do is grin, because the old world is gone. You were never meant to belong in it. You were meant to outlive it. They engineered comfort, sold you perfection in pixels, trained everyone to believe that predictability was peace. But you never trusted peace that came with terms and conditions. While they worshipped stability, you trained in storms. They had savings accounts. You had escape plans. They posted goals. You memorized patterns. And now that the glitch turned global, now that reality's stuttering like a corrupted stream, they want your help, they want your brain, they want your survivor's code, but they forgot something. You tried to teach them? You offered the map, you dropped breadcrumbs, and they stepped on every single one. So now they sit in ruins, holding shattered smartphones like crucifixes, hoping for a signal, while you walk through the wreckage like it was built for you, because it was. They laughed when you questioned the script. They mocked you when you unplugged. Conspiracy theorist, they whispered. Now, they're whispering your name in panic rooms. You saw the cracks long before the quake. You weren't reading headlines. You were reading intentions. You didn't watch the news. You watched behavior. While they trusted updates, you trusted your gut. While they chased trends, you tracked the tremors. You predicted the silence before the scream. You heard the sirens before the chaos. And when it hit, they looked for leaders. You became the storm. Now they want advice. Now they want your checklist. Now they want the instincts they called paranoia. Nah, you tried. They ignored. So now, you move different. You don't argue. You don't convince. You watch them wake up, one nervous breakdown at a time. They told you to get in line, but you drew your own. They begged you to fit in, but you built the mold they're copying now. See, when everything looked perfect, you felt the distortion. When they were blinded by comfort, you were sharpening your edge in the shadows, because you knew something no one else wanted to hear. The old world was a trap. It wasn't peace. It was sedation. It wasn't order. It was a programmed loop designed to numb, distract, and domesticate you. You didn't escape because you hated the world. You escaped because you remembered you were never meant to live on your knees. And now, the algorithm can't predict you. The system can't classify you. The fear in their eyes says it all. You're not reacting. You're orchestrating. They want the old world back? Too late. You broke the mirror. Now all they can see is the reflection they tried to bury. They laughed when you warned them, said you were paranoid, called you crazy. But now they whisper your name like a warning, because the crash came. Not with sirens, not with fire, but with silence. The kind that hums after a system overload. You didn't just see it coming. You felt it. You tasted the glitch in every interaction, smelled the rot beneath their luxury, heard the screams beneath their calm voices, and when it finally hit, they looked around for leaders, for saviors, for old gods, but none came. Because the old world wasn't just gone. You deleted it. They want it back? Let them rebuild it from ashes. But don't you dare slow down. You're not looking back. You're not repeating history. You're writing a threat-level prophecy with every step. They thought collapse would be loud. Explosions, riots, sirens. But the truth? Collapse is a whisper. And you were the echo they ignored too long. Their systems didn't fall overnight. They corroded, one fake smile, one sold-out value, one forgotten truth at a time. And while they chased comfort, you chased signals. You saw it in the code, in the cracks of their policies, in the eyes of their puppets. You saw the virus before the fever. Now the networks flicker. The elites panic in silk-lined bunkers. The media stutters. The illusion bleeds. And what are they doing? Crawling back to you, begging the anomaly for answers. The same anomaly they tried to erase. Too late. You're not here to rewind time. You're here to redefine it. And this version, you're not saving the world. You're replacing it. They silenced you once, laughed at the warnings, mocked the math, labeled you unstable, just another conspiracy. But now, they're decoding your journals like scripture, trying to map your madness, only to find reality written between every insane line. You didn't predict the future. You read it, like a glitch in the matrix that couldn't be unglitched. Every pattern, every frequency, every lie wrapped in truth, you felt it vibrating before the static broke. And now they're trembling, because you don't want back the old world. You buried it. You evolved past it. And the scariest part? You're not trying to fix anything. You're letting it burn and building your empire from the ashes. They used to say that'll never happen. Now they say, how did you know? You didn't guess. You remembered. Because chaos doesn't surprise the ones born inside it. You weren't shocked when the towers cracked, when the masks fell, when the system started eating itself. You were ready. Not with a plan, with a presence, with a precision they can't teach, a madness they can't bottle. You warned them. The storm's not coming. It's already inside the walls. They called you dramatic. Now they call you prophet. Now they sit in ruins, watching reruns of their own mistakes, begging for the version of reality that let them sleep. But you never needed comfort. You sharpened your mind on catastrophe. You danced while the sky broke. And now that it's all smoke, you're just getting started. They built their kingdoms on comfort, but you built your mind in collapse. They studied success. You studied survival. When they laughed at your paranoia, you were building an arsenal of awareness. When they clung to normal, you were mapping exits in your sleep. And now, they're stuck in the wreckage, trying to decode the blueprint you warned them about, the blueprint you burned. You told them, comfort is the real virus. Security is a leash dressed as freedom. They ignored you. Now they're choking on the smoke of a system that thought it could own you. You never belonged to it. You studied it. You learned its tone of voice, its blind spots, its soft underbelly made of lies. And when the first crack hit, you didn't run. You smiled. Because this isn't your end. It's your beginning. You warned them, not with fear, but with clarity. They mistook for insanity. Because you didn't just survive the old world. You outgrew it. You saw the patterns behind the promises. You saw the chains hidden in their comforts. You saw the reset coming, not as a conspiracy, but as a mathematical certainty. Systems built on lies always collapse, and now that collapse has a name. Yours. They whisper it like folklore, like a curse, like maybe, just maybe. You're the reason their empire cracked. But the truth is worse. You didn't break it. You predicted it. You didn't attack the tower. You just waited for it to rot. And when it did, you walked through the rubble like you'd been there before. Because you had. In your mind, 1,000 times. They mocked you when you disconnected, laughed when you stepped back, scoffed when you said this won't last. But now, they're glued to screens that no longer comfort, waiting for systems that no longer serve, praying to gods of tech and control, but getting silence in return. And you're calm, collected, prepared. Because while they were scrolling, you were studying. While they were sedated, you were sharpening. They thought silence meant surrender, but it was strategy. You didn't retreat. You recalibrated. You didn't isolate. You insulated. Now they sit in ruins of a world you walked away from. And suddenly, you look like a prophet. But you're not. You're just someone who saw the lie and refused to live inside it. They tried to label you paranoid, delusional, dangerous, because your clarity terrified them. You didn't panic when the algorithms turned sentient. You didn't flinch when the currencies collapsed. You smiled because every glitch in the matrix was exactly where you said it'd be. You mapped the downfall with a marker and a cigarette, on napkins, in whispers, in rooms no one wanted to enter. They ignored you. Then they ridiculed you. Then they needed you. Now they're asking how you knew, how you saw the storm before the clouds even gathered. But the truth is, you didn't predict the future. You remembered it. You felt its pulse in every lie they packaged as progress. You heard it scream from behind every update and upgrade. And while they begged for comfort, you built for collapse. So now that everything's crashing, you're not scared. You're activated. They thought you were just another conspiracy click, another basement voice spinning fear into fantasies. But now, they're downloading every archive you ever posted, zooming into screenshots you dropped 3 years ago, searching for codes in the chaos they used to laugh at. Funny, isn't it? The same people who said that'll never happen are now praying for your next sentence, because you didn't just see the cracks. You knew what would break next, and what would be waiting under the rubble. While they clung to comfort, you studied collapse. You dissected systems like a surgeon with a grudge. You learned how lies scale, how power cloaks itself in convenience, how control creeps in with a smile and a software update. And now that the lights are flickering, you're not running, you're watching, you're tracking, you're preparing for the next silence. Because silence is when the real shift begins. They mocked your questions, rolled their eyes when you doubted the narrative, called you paranoid, broken, disconnected. But now they whisper your name like it's a frequency, a cipher, a last signal of sense in the static, because their leaders lost the plot. Their anchors stopped reading the script. Their symbols don't mean safety anymore. And all those polished suits, just masks over malfunction. But you adapted to confusion. You danced through contradiction. You weren't built for order. You were forged in disorder. And that makes you dangerous. Not because you want chaos, but because you can navigate it. You can hear patterns in the panic, feel the rhythm beneath their resets. You warn them with laughter. You disguise truth in madness. And now that madness is making sense, they're circling back to you. Not because they trust you, but because nothing else fits anymore. They're begging for the past, but the bridge burned. The moment they laughed at your warnings, they thought reality was a movie with a happy ending guaranteed. But now the credits are glitching, and you're the only name still on screen. You don't need applause. You never wanted followers. You wanted truth, and when you found it, it looked nothing like what they sold. You walked through the static, You smiled at the system while planting chaos like seeds under its polished floorboards. They thought you were broken, but you were breaking the box they built to contain minds like yours. Now the lights flicker, the algorithms twitch, and their experts can't decode what you understood intuitively. That control is an illusion. That fear is currency. That freedom isn't given. It's taken with every step outside their grid. And now, they don't want leaders. They want you, the anomaly, the one who thrives when the script ends. They thought chaos was a glitch. You showed them. It's a feature, a wake-up call, dressed in distortion, echoing in every cracked foundation they once called normal. You didn't rage. You observed, you calculated. While they danced under artificial lights, you mapped every wire beneath the stage. You didn't scream, you smiled. Because silence cuts deeper when it holds secrets. And now they look at you like prophecy. But you're just someone who stopped lying to themselves first. They built their empires on stability. You learned to surf on collapse. They needed certainty. You thrived in the void. They study your moves now, trying to replicate what can't be taught. Instinct born from betrayal, clarity born from collapse. You didn't just break out of the cage. You convinced the others it never existed. That's why they fear you. Because you didn't bring destruction. You brought clarity, and that's far more dangerous. So now they sit in their corner offices rereading your words like scripture, looking for escape plans in the warnings they once laughed at. Too dramatic, too dark, too much. That's what they said. Until the lights went out, until their echo chambers cracked, until silence stopped being peaceful and started sounding like you. And now, the panic is poetic, because the very system they served is the one begging for mercy. The AI is hallucinating, the markets are crying, and the people are remembering. They're remembering how you warned them, how you told them collapse wouldn't scream, it would whisper. And that whisper wore your grin, your madness, your truth. They begged for the old world back, but the old world was a cage. And you were always born to burn cages. They feared the fire, but now they miss its warmth, because winter came without your warning. So now, they don't fear you anymore. They revere you. They quote you. They miss the lunatic who made sense in the madness. But you're not gone. You're just watching, like always, waiting for the next spark. You disappeared from their screens, but never from their systems, because every firewall they built used your logic. Every update they pushed echoed your glitches. You weren't just ahead of them. You were the blueprint they couldn't understand. They called you broken, but the truth? You were post-human, in a pre-human world. You knew their fall wouldn't come with explosions. It would come with silence, with denial, with them watching you walk away, laughing, as they begged for the rules back. They thought you were warning them, but you were documenting them. Like a cosmic archivist writing the obituary of their era with a smirk and pulse-red ink. And now they whisper your name in labs, in boardrooms, in war rooms. But you're done whispering. You are the siren in the system. They built a world where emotions were liabilities, instincts were errors, and people were programmable. But you were the variable they could never debug. Every plan they wrote, you corrupted. Every metric they used, you shattered. And when the panic started, you didn't run, you watched, because the fall was never your fear, it was your arrival. This isn't chaos to you, this is clarity. The kind that only comes after the storm eats the silence. They thought the virus was digital, but it was never in the code. It was in the truth. Your truth. And now it's spreading through minds too awake to return to sleep. Through systems too cracked to reboot. Through souls too raw to be reprogrammed. They wanted the old world back. But you never left the future. You weren't built to be their leader. You were forged to be their lesson. And now that everything they trusted is dust, they finally look to the one they used to mock, to silence, to exile, the outlier, the glitch, the ghost they couldn't cage. You didn't need a revolution. You were the revolution. Not with crowds, not with flags, but with whispers, triggers, and one chaotic laugh that rewrote their destiny. They bow now, not out of respect, but out of recognition, because even in their collapse, they understand what you are, the final version, the necessary madness, the beautiful mistake that wasn't a mistake at all. And in the ruins of their system, you walk untouched, unbothered, unforgiven, but finally understood.